Everybody can hear me okay? Yes. Awesome. Thanks. Welcome. I'm going to quickly introduce myself and my colleague, and then we'll go ahead and dive in. So my name is Robin Smith. I'm the Group Program Manager for Microsoft Sustainability Manager, which is the business application in the center of Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability. And Amanda?
Hey everybody, Amanda Giglio. I'm a Sustainability Global Black Belt here at Microsoft. So I work with our customers alongside them on their sustainability journeys and help identify the right sustainability solutions and technology to help accelerate them towards their goals.
So today we're going to talk about Copilot Studio applications in sustainability and how Copilot Studio can be used for various mostly compliance-related sustainability use cases. That's what we're going to show today, and how it can actually accelerate growth, especially for you partners in the audience. All right, so let's go ahead and kind of go through the layout of how it's going to go today. So the first thing we're going to do is to talk about Copilot Studio. I'm going to encourage all of you, if you haven't yet, to start your trial actually in this session. And the reason is we do have a mini lab at the end of it. I do want everybody to walk out of here today with their own sustainability-focused Copilot Studio agent. If you're willing, if you're like, I came here to sit back and relax, that's also totally fine. We're going to walk you through. You can take pictures as we go. I will then go into a little bit about the agents that we have in Copilot Studio today that are focused on sustainability, although there is another entire session on the in-market Copilot Studio template agent that is available. And I will be talking through our Ignite Announce agent, which is our EU CBAM, which I'll tell you all about what the carbon border adjustment mechanism is, when that's going to be available, and how that's going to be available to start deploying in December. And then Amanda's going to go through another example, a nice in-depth example of how you can actually use adaptive cards within your Copilot Studio template and your agent to actually perform actions in Microsoft Sustainability Manager. So that's applicable regardless of what type of Power app you use. And then we're going to do the lab, and hopefully we'll have 10 to 15 minutes at the end to actually all think of a sustainability problem together and go ahead and walk through those entry steps. And you're going to see the speed to value of Copilot Studio in sustainability world application. And for the Q&A, I would actually like it if you all could stop us along the way and come up to the mic and ask questions. I do want this to be an interactive session, and so please, 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 if you want, come forward and shout and we can repeat the question, or go up to the mic and ask your question. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So how many folks here have used Copilot Studio? Yay. Okay, great. So a lot of people already have their trial going, or their license going. And how many of you all are regular Power Platform users? Okay. And how many folks in here have heard of Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability? Okay. So pretty good audience. What I would say is, for those of you that haven't learned much about Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability, this is kind of an odd one because it's a sustainability session where we're not talking about the broader suite of products in Cloud for Sustainability. If you do have questions, do pop by the sustainability booth. It's right by the Microsoft sign in the middle of the hub. And Amanda and I are often there. A lot of our colleagues, Shelly, is often there. And so stop by, learn more. What it is it's a suite of products and services centered around enabling organizations to manage their sustainability footprint for reporting and ultimately reduction impact. Ooh. Okay, back to Copilot Studio. What we're really focused on today is the low-code use cases of Copilot Studio and being able to pull in different requirements and organizations such as sustainability standards and their application within Copilot Studio. We've actually done this a couple of different ways for our examples. We've done it both in Teams and just in Copilot Studio. When you see a demo today, you're gonna see that in Copilot Studio, but do know that it's almost as simple in Teams, and you can bring in those agents there. How many folks have actually built an agent using Copilot Studio? Has anybody built an agent yet? Great. That makes me very excited, because if this is your first agent today, yay. That's goodness. So, because I do want everyone that wants to walk out of here with the start of an agent. Okay, so what templates are available today relating to sustainability? So we have the Sustainability Insights template that was actually announced at Build last spring. And what this does is this enables organizations to provide a nice Q&A platform, natural language platform for their sustainability report. They can use that internal with employees. They can use it, wherever they deploy it. And so that is available today. Feel free to go out. You actually can access this one within Copilot Studio. And then, as I mentioned, and what I'm going to demo here in a minute, is the EU Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism template. And that'll be available in December. This is what's called an advanced template. And this is part of our lab, is how to make an advanced template. So what makes a simple agent versus advanced? Does anybody know? So simple has one available open source at least. And advanced, you're going to use those connector features within Copilot Studio, which is very exciting, because that enables you to bring together public domain knowledge with private data. And that marriage is really where we see value. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. How we do deploy our advanced templates is via the Power Platform Gallery, as well as AppSource. So it's something that you can use, the AppSource process that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, to make these available. Okay, so why sustainability plus Copilot? For those of us in the sustainability world, we're coming upon many challenges on top of the actual just overwhelming challenge that is sustainability. And that is the bombardment of a lot of regulations that are coming from various geographies, the breadth of regulations. We're actually going to hit on a big one for our lab. We're going to discuss the EU taxonomy and how Copilot Studio can help with the just overwhelming and sheer volume of knowledge that's available out there for sustainability standards. And so when you look at how Copilot Studio and agents can actually help tackle a lot of real-world problems, the application in sustainability provides a lot of value. And the reason for that is you have a lot of new things. You need to be able to understand that information quickly. You need to be able to take a certain audience that is less technical friendly, such as sustainability practitioners, get them up to speed on it quickly. LLM does a really nice job of accelerating that, and that's hopefully what you see today and can take away. Any questions so far? Okay. All right. So let's talk about the EU Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. So how many folks have heard about the EU taxonomy and or CBAMs and what these are? Okay. So a couple folks. Very applicable if you're in either the supply chain world or the sustainability world or the IT world, because what you're going to learn really fast is if you're enabling supply chain organizations and you do business in Europe, this massively impacts you. It's a quite hefty fee. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit. That'll be fully in effect in 2026. And what it aims to do is it aims to reduce the concept of what we call carbon leakage, which means that there might be less sort of taxes on processing outside of the EU. And so what the EU is trying to do is level the playing field. So if you're an importer, you're shipping something to the EU, this is going to apply to you. So the reason why it's very important for businesses is A, they need to start estimating and budgeting for this ASAP. That's something that we're doing internally as Microsoft and a lot of organizations are doing. And also just understand this because there are reporting requirements that also come along with this. All right. Let's do our first demo. Folks can see my agent? Okay, great. So you can see here, and I'm going to use some Copilot Studio specific terms instead of just domain terms. And the reason I'm doing that is because I do want you guys to be familiar with some of these concepts. So you see I have this multiple choice here with options that we've provided. The reason why we do that, and it's one of those prompting techniques that really helps with success rates. So instead of just giving a slew of options in paragraph form of what our Copilot agent can do, I'm giving two very specific use cases and asking my users to use that as a jump-off point. And that's a pretty important best practice, I would say, of designing agents. So here it can do two things: information about the CBAM regulation and calculate CBAM costs. And so I'm going to start with information about the CBAM regulation. All right. And you'll be able to see, and Amanda has some good, I think, flow to walk through for her topics and actions over here. My activity map is not as exciting, but you have the option of seeing what the actual logic is while you're walking through. And so it kind of gives the topics that you'll be able to address with the general knowledge, and then you can exit at any time. So the first question I have is, why does the EU need a carbon border adjustment program? So it's thinking. And it gives me a nice explanation about why it's doing it, its aims, how it actually is hoping that this program can be used to address the EU's carbon goals. What is carbon leakage? And you can see here, there is more information about what carbon leakage is, how it aims to level the playing field, et cetera. And now, before I start my estimations, I'm going to say, how should I start to calculate my fee? Hopefully it gives me good directions. And here it kind of talks me through step by step why I need to be thinking about it, how I need to be preparing for it, including timelines, which are very important. So I'm going to exit, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to calculate the costs. So this is where it becomes an advanced template. So what we have is we have a connection here to Dataverse. Now, for those of you that are familiar with Cloud for Sustainability, you will know that you can actually get the Cloud for Sustainability data model. You can just deploy that within Power Platform. Go to Solution Center and you can deploy that, and you can do that without a license. That's actually a really good way for organizations just to start tracking and understanding how they approach sustainability if something like Microsoft Sustainability Manager that has a license along with it isn't attainable. So what this connection does is it talks directly to the product carbon footprint table that is within that schema. And so I'm going to say yes. Once again, we used very just specific cards to make it really easy for the user. What is the product name? My organization is a coffee company, so I'm going to say Robusta Dark Roast. And so it's going to find my product for me because the very first step is it needs to find that embodied carbon of a product. And so here it's actually looking through Dataverse. You can see that it was able to find that. And the reason it was able to find it so quickly and go directly to emissions is really in how we trained that topic. And we're going to talk more about topic training. Amanda's going to talk about it, and then we're going to do it in the lab also. What is the price of carbon per ton? The last time I looked, it was about $60 per metric ton. Also an opportunity when you think about the extra data sources that could be used for a service like this, such as finding what the current EU carbon price is. All right, so now we have our answer. So you can see that it pulled in the total GHG emissions. It then calculated the cost. It does the unit conversions and actually shows you what the unit conversions it used was, which for me is really nice as a practitioner because I like to understand how those unit conversions have happened. I don't need to try another calculation scenario. So that's the high-level EU CBAM agent. Like I said, that's going to be available in December, and you can deploy it through AppSource and Power Platform Gallery. Any organization that does business in the EU is going to need to start thinking about this. So really good, really lightweight way to introduce that to organizations, start getting folks to think about sustainability and how technology, specifically Copilot Studio in this case, can actually get answers and get them ready for emerging standards. All right. Thanks. Amanda?
Yeah. So now I'm going to take us through an...
It's back on main.
Okay, great.
Do you want the clicker?
Yeah. So I'm going to show us an example of an agent that I made. This is going to be a goal-setting agent. And the reason I did create this one for our example today was just because this is something that I feel is really challenging when you are trying to set your company's targets and goals, to be able to go through all of your current data that you do have, maybe get the status and progress of current goals and targets that you have set, and then needing that guidance so that you can quickly arrive to a new goal that you're trying to set with the guidance that's available out there. So what we're going to see today in the demo is we're going to see first how we add in the different knowledge sources, what some of those different options are, and then how we can create the different Q&A topics that the agent is going to be conversing back and forth with our users on. And then we're going to see some of the guides that are going to help them create their goals. We're going to see some of the adaptive card feature, if you're familiar with that. And then finally, we're going to be able to see that information submitted back into the Dataverse in Sustainability Manager as a new goal. So now I'll take us over to our demo. And this is my goal setting agent that I have created. When you create a new one, you're able to, of course, customize and make it your own however you want to, different labeling and icons. But you are going to give your agent some instructions on how you are wanting them to behave and what their purpose is for the end user. So mine has instructions letting it know that they are to guide my users through the goal creation process, provide them with that important information, and then we'll eventually be directing them to create that new goal here. And then as we scroll down a little bit here, we're going to see some of the knowledge that I added to this agent. So you'll see I have different things like a website connection for some EPA guidance on target setting. I have some different PDF documents on UN guidance. And then I also have a Dataverse connector here. So this is connected to the Sustainability Manager data first, and it is pulling in my current scorecard and goal information that I do have. And what we're going to see later is how that's leveraged in the topics to give us insights on the current ones that we have set. And then we saw a little bit earlier in Robin's slide, right, that in Copilot Studio we have about 1,400 different connector options here for the knowledge sources. One of those that is coming soon is Fabric. So this would be something really powerful to leverage here where you could connect to your ESG data estate that resides in the sustainability data solutions. That way, right, you have all of that information that you're able to query and have even more guidance on. And if you are interested in that, you can stop by the Fabric booth and they can let you know how you can get early access to that Fabric connector. For the folks online, you can reach out and I can send y'all in the right direction. So now we're going to look at the different topics that I have built out. And we're going to see when we open up the little test window here, we're going to see that path that the topics are going to go down. So I'm going to start at my conversation start topic in Node. And then we're going to follow along over here. So first, starting out, a greeting message for the user, having the agent introduce themselves and how they are here to support them. You can also attach any kind of media here. It could be pictures, videos, anything to help get them started and give them more information. Then I have a question node here with multiple choice answers, and that's what we're seeing initially here on the side so that the users have some type of guidance and prompt of things to select here. And then finally, based on whatever that option is that's going to be selected, it's then going to take it to that condition and it's going to redirect it to another topic. So we'll look at a couple of these right now. So first, maybe I want to check the progress on my goals that are in Sustainability Manager right now, MSM for short. And so I can see when I selected that, see it illuminated this flow here to show me that this is the path that this is now taking. And I have a response back. It gives me a little overview of the ones that I do have. Maybe I want some more information on this. I'll say, do I have any mobile combustion goals in MSM? We'll try once more. Okay, and maybe it didn't like that one today, so that's okay. But to that point, when you do make the selection, it's going down that condition path, and you can follow that here as you're testing the Copilot, and then it will redirect you to that topic. So we'll see this again with creating a goal in MSM. So back at the start, we'll select that we want to create a goal. So it has illuminated that path here that it wants to take, and it is redirecting me to the creating a goal topic. So this is a separate topic, and so topic can redirect to another topic. That's one of many options that are here. And so next, it is saying, hey, it looks like you're looking for help on creating a goal. That's correct. Takes us down to our next step here. And now it wants a little bit more information about the goal I am trying to create here. So maybe this is business travel reduction. It'll take us down to our next path, and it's trying to create an answer with this create generative answer node. And then this is where it's using those knowledge sources that we had previously added in. If I go to edit, we'll see that I can use any or all of those knowledge sources that I had previously added in here. And this is where you can select and manage that on the node. So from that previous selection, right, I did tell it I wanted the business travel reduction goals, what I'm trying to set. So now it has given me some steps and some guidance to follow. Do I want to publish this now in Sustainability Manager? And when I've selected that, that is when this adaptive card has become available to me. And when you would want to use these adaptive cards is when you have some type of structured response you're expecting back from the user. So in this example, because the data is going back to Sustainability Manager, we're expecting certain required fields for our goal to be created. So this is a perfect case, right, where we would want to use this. And then you also can pop open your adaptive cards if you have yours up, and you'll be able to see that these are created with JSON, and you can edit those in there. And then from those outputs, whatever the user has given us, we then have another action that is following this to bring that data into the Sustainability Manager Dataverse. So that is then going to trigger an action for a Power Automate flow. It's also part of the Power Platform here, and it is going to send and submit all of that data to the Dataverse, and then we will be able to see that goal available in Sustainability Manager here. And now we are going to see how you can extend, build your own agent or extend off of some of the existing ones here.
Thanks, Amanda. So you just saw a very sort of advanced way to upsert information from Copilot Studio into Sustainability Manager. And don't worry, we're not going to be that complicated when we get started here, but I do want everybody to, we're going to go ahead and make it our own. So if you want, this is the time to get your laptop out. And if you have Copilot Studio, great. If you don't, go ahead and kick off that trial. It takes just a few seconds. And if you're here to relax, feel free to take pictures of the step-by-step. So essentially, here's the framework we're going to use. So the first one, give your Copilot direction. So this is where I want you to think, what is a business problem I want to solve? So as a sustainability practitioner, I spend a lot of time fielding questions for the broader Microsoft organization on the EU taxonomy. It's shocking the amount of questions that I get on a daily basis, and I think that's actually a really new common problem within our organizations. And the reason is that is now a problem that is not just for sustainability practitioners anymore, it's a problem for our supply chain professionals. So the idea, if you don't have another one, is we're going to make, as part of this, the EU taxonomy accessible to our supply chains within our organization. So think of this as something you deploy internally to your supply chain organization as an IT persona that you would want to make information more broadly accessible. Another application could be accessibility to sales teams, because sales teams also likely have to have this information if they're working in the EU. So that's going to be our first step. Our next step, we're going to add the knowledge sources. So in this one, if you are a Power Platform user, I'm going to actually have us connect to one of the common entities. I'm going to have us connect to account within Dataverse. How many folks use Dataverse semi-regularly here and there? Okay, great. So I'm going to have us connect to account. Same extensibility rules apply. So if you're extending something, that's available to access within your Copilot Studio as well. We aren't going to extend for this. I was originally going to have us do that, and I said, nope, we're going to make this more simple and not extend for the lab. So we're just going to work with the existing account entity. If you do not use Dataverse and you want to, for example, just use Excel, just use Excel. Excel connectors work fantastic with Copilot Studio. And as a sustainability practitioner and someone who works with many sustainability organizations out there, I have yet to see an organization that doesn't have at least some of their carbon accounting information in Excel somewhere within their ecosystem. So it's not all in a database. Add topics. So we're going to add a very basic topic. We're going to add the topic of supply chain applicability for our supply chain organizations. And we probably aren't going to get to the extend with Power Automate today because I don't want to get people stuck. But what I do want to do is I want to get us started on those first 3 topics. Sounds good? Okay.
Yeah, and you can go to aka.ms/Copilot Studio to get started.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to switch back to our demo machine. Okay. And we're going to start from scratch. With a new agent. And earlier, remember when I was talking about the agent that we have available, Sustainability Insights? You can see it here within Copilot Studio, just for reference. But I want everybody to go to New Agent. All right, so this is where we get to use Copilot to build a Copilot. And because we're doing this live, I'm going to probably be a little bit more concise than I would be. So I'd like to create agent to simplify the EU taxonomy for my internal supply chain to make them familiar with the program and also use our company data within context of taxonomy. All right. And it really can be this simple. You would be shocked how much the LLM can get just from basic descriptions. All right. Let's call it the EU taxonomy agent. And for folks following along, good pace. We're doing okay? Keeping up? Okay. All right. Anything to emphasize or avoid? And so this is where if you had certain things that were off reasons for compliance or off limit for compliance reasons, you could absolutely include that. This is also where you could, you can basically give Copilot times where you don't want it to use its general knowledge sources. You want it to say, that's outside of my scope. We're not going to get into that right now, so I'm going to say nope.